Senator Whitehouse accused Todd Blanche of participating in an Epstein cover-up, citing a botched DOJ release that exposed victims' names and revealed only one of 4 FD 302s mentioning Trump, with 3 others released only after they were caught. He also alleged Blanche met with Maxwell before her transfer to a club-fed prison, and that the DOJ ignored suspicious Epstein accounts linked to Russia, with ongoing fraud proceedings in Florida. The presumption of regularity, he said, has been destroyed.
Thank you, Chairman. Today, I think, is a sad and embarrassing day for this committee. As it looks like on a party line vote, we are going to advance out of this committee probably the most discreditable person ever to seek the office of Attorney General of the United States. The reasons to vote against him number in the hundreds. But let's just focus on a few where my Republican colleagues purport to have great concern. Let's start with the Epstein files, where Todd Blanche participated in the cover-up, continues to participate in the cover-up, and is responsible for a massive screw-up of the release of the documents. Cover-up and screw-up on the Epstein files. What do I mean by cover-up? Well, first, they looked at 4 FBI 302s that were the testimony of a woman who told the FBI in a formal statement that she had been sexually assaulted and physically assaulted by Donald Trump around 13 or 14 years of age. Of those 4 302s, they released 1, the one that did not mention Donald Trump. Well, fortunately for transparency, these documents had been released in other areas and bait-stamped. So people figured out that some were missing. And with that, the other 302s that mentioned Donald Trump had to be produced. Only because they got caught were those 302s produced. And right now, as we sit here, Todd Blanche is still sitting on 37 pages that are almost certainly the agent's notes off of which the 302s were taken. That should be disclosed under the Epstein Files law, but instead, those 37 pages remain covered up. Where else did the cover-up go? Well, the Department of Justice received suspicious activity reports from the Treasury Department about Epstein's accounts, many of them related to Russia. You'd think that an investigative body like the Department of Justice could look at a document called Suspicious Activity Report and deduce that there might be suspicious activity. But did they even have a look? Billions of dollars in Epstein fund transfers, and the Todd Blanche Department never even had a look. And then you get to Ghislaine Maxwell, where a deputy attorney general flew to Tallahassee to have a private meeting with a woman convicted of participating in Epstein's depravity. And what was the upshot of that meeting? Was it to get more information about who else was culpable, about whose secrets were still being kept? No. It was to get exculpatory information about Donald Trump and then reward her with a move to a club-fed prison. Now, the nominal excuse for that is, oh, she was in danger in her earlier prison, so we had to move her. How often does a prisoner allegedly facing threats or danger get moved to a less secure facility? I mean, think about it. It doesn't pass the test of common sense. So, between the botched disclosure, which revealed victims of Epstein's depravity, whose names had not been previously known, in some cases with photographic images with their addresses, in some cases photographs without being fully clothed. Where does the buck stop for that, if not with Mr. Blanche? That was an epic botch that did real harm to Epstein's victims. Voting for this guy today gives their blessing to the screw-up, to the botched release that even Pam Bondi pointed at Blanche as responsible for. And it gives the blessing to his continuing role in the cover-up of Epstein files. So there's Epstein for you. And let me ask the letter from the Epstein victims to Senators Tillis and Cornyn to be put into the record. So next we get to this crooked slush fund Trump family tax amnesty scam. Let's take a look at that. We've got these two new pieces of paper, one signed only by Todd Blanche, one not signed by anybody, neither of which has any legal effect whatsoever. They are decorative. So what problems do they leave behind? Well, one is, can you trust Todd Blanche going forward? I will tell you, I do not. I think it would be unreasonable to trust him going forward. There is enough weasel room in these documents to drive a truck through. And what might that truck look like? Well, you could get rid of the anti-weaponization fund for $1.776 billion, and in a month, put out the Trump Justice Fund for $1.9 billion. Nothing in this document prevents anything like that from happening. You could open a drive-up window at the Department of Justice for cop beaters from January 6th to come through and get friendly Federal Tort Claims Act settlements from the Department of Justice. They're already handing out settlements to Trump's allies. What's to prevent the drive-up window? Come on in. Here we are. We got the friendly form for you to file, and here's a check. Nothing prevents the cop beaters from being funded by the Trump Department of Justice. But let's assume that we really have made a big improvement here. Let's assume that the burglar has been forced to give back some of the jewelry he stole. Being forced to give back some ill-gotten gains doesn't mean you're not still a burglar. There's a question of the man's character, that he was willing to get into these schemes in the first place, into what George Will called the sludge of self-dealing of this administration. even if there isn't Slush Fund 2.0, and even if there isn't the drive-up window for cop beaters, there's a real problem with an individual who would agree to that in the first place. To me, that should be disqualifying. And the last bit on that is how he got there. Let's not forget that there is an ongoing proceeding in Florida in federal court with an open question whether Todd Blanche committed a fraud upon the court. We don't hear that term, fraud upon the court, very often. It's probably the worst thing you can accuse someone of in a court proceeding. It means you're an officer of the court. It means you abused the process of the court, and you did so in order to accomplish an unjust and wrongful result. It's actually worse than contempt of court. It is so bad that in the history of the Department of Justice, no senior official has ever been even accused of a fraud upon the court. And we're advancing this guy before that question is settled in Florida, while there's still a bar issue, a disciplinary issue with the New York bar related to that misconduct. Fraud on the court is a big deal, and it's not going away. Then last of all, you've just got the general dishonesty and incompetence of the operation that Todd Blanche is running. And I'm not going to go through the list. It would take the whole day. But let me go through a couple of summaries of it. The Economist magazine, not exactly a left-wing publication, had its lead article, its cover article, on the U.S. Department of Justice, title, Degradation in Process. Degradation in Process. I ask unanimous consent to add that article to my remarks.
Without objection. Sure.
Then here's a story from ProPublica. Federal judges chastised Trump's Justice Department for unlawful, unethical, and unseemly conduct. I'll just read the first sentence. Across the country, federal judges are calling out Department of Justice lawyers, questioning in unprecedented ways whether they can be trusted to tell the truth or uphold centuries-old legal norms. I ask unanimous consent that that article be added to the record.
Without objection. So ordered.
And then there's a group called Just Security, which reads through decisions from federal judges around the country and gathers the incidences in which the federal judge has challenged the integrity or the competence of the Department of Justice. It's about this thick. I'll just ask to have its introduction put into the record. If my colleagues want to go and look and see what the avalanche of misconduct that Blanche's leadership has precipitated looks like, you know where to find the report. Here's the introduction. It talks about the presumption of regularity, a judicially created doctrine with a long and contested history. The doctrine affords the executive branch a distinct advantage by instructing courts to presume that executive officials have properly discharged their official duties. And what the report characterizes is the destruction of that presumption of regularity in this Department of Justice. So I ask unanimous consent that that be added as well. And then, since I've mentioned it, I'll also ask George Will's article where I described his description of The settlement between the president and the executive branch he heads, exemplifying the administration's sludge of self-dealing. That also be added to the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
The last question that I'm left with here is what's left of this committee? What's left of this committee when we don't demand straight answers from witnesses? How many times has this Department of Justice been asked what became of the $50,000 that the FBI reported that it handed to Mr. Homan in a bribery sting? That's administrative stuff. That gets reported. There's an account. You've got to check the money out. If you get the money back, you've got to check the money back. There's an administrative trail. We can't get any information about that. Our Republican colleagues see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. Kash Patel virtually certainly lied to this committee sitting in front of us. Is there any interest in that? At a time when Republicans in Congress seem agitated about Biden officials lying to Congress? We got lies right here, folks. I don't know where this committee goes after it stops being taken seriously, because all you have to be is on the right partisan side to get this committee to roll over and play dead. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse just delivered a masterclass in how to expose the corruption, cover-up, and incompetence of Todd Blanche and the Department of Justice under his leadership. He did not come with a speech. He came with questions. He came with the facts of the Epstein cover-up. He came with the evidence of the slush fund scam. He came with the articles from The Economist, ProPublica, and Just Security. And he left no doubt about the answer. The exchange between Whitehouse and the committee was not just a routine hearing. It was a confrontation about the fundamental question of whether the nominee can be trusted to lead the Department of Justice. It was about whether the Department of Justice will serve the public or serve the president and his allies. Whitehouse began by saying, "This is a sad and embarrassing day." He said Blanche is the most discreditable person ever to seek the office of Attorney General. He said the reasons to vote against him number in the hundreds. He focused on a few. He started with the Epstein files. He said Blanche participated in the cover-up and is responsible for a massive screw-up. He said the DOJ released one of 4 FD 302s from a woman who said she was sexually assaulted by Trump at 13 or 14. The other 3, which mentioned Trump, were only released after they got caught. He said Blanche is still sitting on 37 pages of agents' notes. He said the DOJ ignored suspicious activity reports on Epstein's accounts, many related to Russia. He said billions of dollars in Epstein fund transfers were never looked at. The cover-up is not just a failure of transparency, it is an active effort to protect Donald Trump. The FD 302s are formal FBI interview reports. They contain sworn testimony from victims. They are evidence of crimes. The DOJ released only the one that did not mention Trump. It hid the ones that did. It only released them after it was caught. That is not a mistake. That is a deliberate cover-up. Blanche was in charge. He is responsible. He is still sitting on 37 pages of agents' notes. Those notes should be disclosed under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. They are not being disclosed. The cover-up continues. Whitehouse then turned to Ghislaine Maxwell. He said Blanche flew to Tallahassee to meet with her. He said the purpose was to get exculpatory information about Trump and reward her with a move to a club-fed prison. He said the excuse that she was in danger doesn't pass the test of common sense. He said the botched release revealed victims' names, addresses, and images. He said that was an epic botch that did real harm. He said voting for Blanche gives blessing to the screw-up and the cover-up. The Maxwell meeting is a scandal. Blanche met with a convicted sex trafficker. He met with her for 2 days. He claimed he was seeking the truth, but no new charges resulted. No new investigations resulted. Maxwell was transferred to a minimum security camp. That is a reward. That is not justice. The excuse that she was in danger is not credible. Prisoners in danger are put in solitary confinement or protective custody. They are not moved to camps. The Bureau of Prisons has policies on this. Sex traffickers are not supposed to be in minimum security camps. The transfer was a reward. Blanche arranged it. He is responsible. Whitehouse then turned to the slush fund. He said it is a crooked scam. He said the documents are decorative and have no legal effect. He said there is enough weasel room to drive a truck through. He said the anti-weaponization fund could be replaced with a Trump Justice Fund. He said a drive-up window for cop beaters could be opened. He said nothing prevents that. He said the question is character. He said Blanche was willing to get into these schemes. He said that should be disqualifying. The slush fund is a scandal. It was a transparent attempt to reward Trump's allies. It was a way to compensate people who attacked police officers on January 6th. The administration backed off after public outrage, but the order still exists. It can be resurrected. Blanche signed it. He is responsible. He says it is no longer in effect, but he has not rescinded it. He has only suspended it. That is not accountability. That is a delay tactic. Whitehouse then turned to the fraud upon the court allegation. He said it's the worst thing you can accuse someone of. He said it means you abused the process of the court. He said it's worse than contempt. He said no senior DOJ official has ever been accused of it. He said Blanche is being advanced before that question is settled. He said there is a bar issue in New York. The fraud upon the court allegation is unprecedented. It is a federal judge accusing the DOJ of colluding with Trump plaintiffs. The judge found collusion. She found violations of DOJ policies. She found dereliction of duty. She found failure to advocate for the United States. The question of fraud upon the court remains open. Blanche is facing this allegation. He is still being advanced. That is not normal. That is not acceptable. Whitehouse then turned to the general dishonesty and incompetence. He cited the Economist article titled Degradation in Process. He cited ProPublica's article on federal judges chastising the DOJ for unlawful, unethical, and unseemly conduct. He cited the Just Security report on the destruction of the presumption of regularity. He said the committee is not demanding straight answers. He asked about the $50,000 from the bribery sting. He said Kash Patel virtually certainly lied to the committee. He said the committee rolls over and plays dead. The DOJ under Blanche has lost the presumption of regularity. Federal judges do not trust its lawyers. They question whether they can be trusted to tell the truth. They question whether they can uphold legal norms. That is unprecedented. That is a crisis. The committee is ignoring it. It is advancing a nominee who is at the center of it. Whitehouse's argument is devastating. He did not need to prove that Blanche is corrupt. He only needed to show that he cannot be trusted. He showed that Blanche participated in the Epstein cover-up. He showed that the DOJ ignored suspicious activity reports. He showed that Blanche met with Maxwell and she got a reward. He showed that the botched release harmed victims. He showed that the slush fund is a scam. He showed that Blanche is facing a fraud upon the court inquiry. He showed that federal judges are criticizing the DOJ. He showed that the presumption of regularity is destroyed. He showed that the committee is not doing its job. The American people deserve better. They deserve a Department of Justice that serves the public. They deserve an Attorney General who upholds the rule of law. They deserve a committee that does its job. They are not getting any of that. Senator Whitehouse said Todd Blanche is the most discreditable person ever to seek the office of Attorney General. He said Blanche participated in the Epstein cover-up. He said the DOJ ignored suspicious activity reports. He said Blanche met with Maxwell and she got a reward. He said the botched release harmed victims. He said the slush fund is a scam. He said Blanche is facing a fraud upon the court inquiry. He said the committee is rolling over and playing dead. The American people deserve better.